All right. Thanks for joining our next series of neutral webinar. Today we have Konrad, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name because I will butcher it. But Konrad's the CEO of ElevateOS, previously known as Elevated Living, and Neutral has been partnered with ElevateOS for about a year now, and we have been using them for all of our software application services for our resident app and resident portal for our whole portfolio, and it's been quite successful. So I wanted to have Konrad today to present some of what he's working on and what he's doing to boost NOI and help us make a little bit more money and give the residents a better experience in our buildings. So I'll turn it over to Konrad. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Nate, for having me. Great to be here. So, agenda for today, pretty straightforward. We're going to do a high-level overview of the software. We'll talk through some of the functionality of some of the tools we have that help the owner, our management company, but also for residents, where we focus on a lot of our time. And then we'll dive into, value to owners, so value proposition for residents, for staff on site, and how we increase NOI for ownership groups. And then, later, Nate, I think you're going to run a little question and answer, right?
Yeah, we'll let people go unmuted after Konrad goes through his presentation.
Perfect. Cool. So a little bit about me. I am the founder and CEO of Elevate. And as Nate said, we have rebranded recently. So you might have heard of our company as Elevated Living for the last few years. I've personally been in the multifamily space for over 10 years. I actually started not in the tech side, but more in the services side, specifically lifestyle services. So I was dealing a lot with different residents and just kind of understanding like what goes into providing great service at these properties. I am from Chicago, and I actually live in the northwest suburbs. And fun fact, I'm a little bit of a wellness fanatic, so I really enjoy anything wellness related. Diets, nutrition, workouts, sports, anything that's wellness related. I love. So if you want to talk sports, workouts, happy to do that after today's call. About Elevate. So, Elevate is essentially a branded tech and service platform for owners. To put it simply, the average resident in an apartment building usually has to juggle about 4.7 portals, right? That they have to log into, manage passwords for. And what Elevate does is we reduce it to just one, right? And I'll go into the details of that. Sometimes we're known as a point solution killer, right? Because a lot of the stuff that we do, we have built into one software. So a lot of ownership groups are able to save money on their tech stack. Last thing is, my background was in services. And when we built out our software, our goal was to build a property management software with hotel style services built in, right? So we're not like a pure tech company. We also have a huge services back office operation that we do to make sure residents have a great experience. So kind of a little bit more kind of high level about our company in terms of, we work in 41 states, 850 plus communities use our software. We've been able to bootstrap the business. We are profitable. We're doing almost 20 million a year in revenue. In terms of acquisitions, we've bought a few companies along the way since 2020. So we bought 3 companies. So, we've been around for a while. We've been doing this. Like I said, I've been in the space for 10 years. Elevate's about 4 or 5 years old. And we've more or less been doubling the business year over year. So we are getting a lot of traction for what we do. So I'm going to dive deeper into what Elevate is and how it works. So we take all the different things that staff or a resident might have to use, and we basically built it into one white labeled platform, right? So I'll start off with the problem because I think it will help kind of put things into perspective. So there's a lot of problems, and there's a lot of solutions in the multifamily vertical, right? So There's also been like a huge proliferation of funding for a lot of prop tech companies. So they all aim to solve, one or two problems. And, over time, that led to residents, like landlords would sign up for different systems, and residents are now having to juggle, 5 different apps on their phone when they move into an apartment. And that's a problem, right? It's a problem for two reasons. One, you're paying, an owner's paying for all these things that sometimes have overlapping functionality. And two, the resident doesn't know which app to use. So you're not really getting the best data. So our solution to that problem is we've built a solution where you can actually brand the software. We take all these point solutions and there's two things we do. Either A, we integrate them into the software. So like if you have an intercom system or smart locks, it's all built in to our app, right? We leverage an API or SDK and we build it in. So residents are getting engaged through one system. The second way we do it is, it's very simple. We build the feature ourselves. So for example, a few years ago, less common now, but a few years ago, I would like meet a property manager and they'd be like, oh, we're paying for this software that lets us text our residents. And I'd be like, wow, so you're paying for a software that just does texting, right? And they'd be like, yeah. And I'm like, well, that's something we could easily add into a platform like ours, right? And then over time, you add maintenance, inspections, move-in checklists. The system keeps getting bigger, right? And before you know it, you have, one app branded, your logo that has all these things built in, right? And that's very attractive, because of a cost saving standpoint, but also from just a resident experience standpoint. So, we like to call ourselves like a super app, right? So here's some screenshots of the platform. It is going to be, the company's branding. It's, the home screen when a resident moves in, it's going to have all the things they need to do, for the property, like paying rent, managing work orders, opening their doors, or even booking things like a housekeeper. All that's in one system. There's no like iframes that open up a separate website, separate app. The goal is to be built in. So our platform is very extensive, and I like to split things up into kind of different sections. So we have a lot of tools that have to do with engagement and operations. So I'm not going to have time to talk about all of them. We have probably over 100 features, but some of the most popular ones, right? So Nate builds very nice buildings, lots of amenities, right? And, a lot of owners are like, oh, like, what am I going to get for rent per square foot? But you also want to look into what can you get for reserving your amenity spaces and parking and storage lockers and all these other things, right? And that's where our platform really shines. We're able to really help owners monetize their amenity spaces and kind of extra things beyond rent, right? And that's where having an app like ours that's all in one, where residents are not being told to go into 3 apps, it keeps them in one place where they can see all the things offered within the community, right? So that's one way. Second thing we have is interest groups. People want to meet their neighbors. Imagine, Nate's into, real estate. I'm into real estate technology, right? And you move into a building, Nate, and you can basically get an alert that says, hey, there's 5 other residents in the building that share the same interest as you. You might want to connect with them. Kind of like those, like a Soho house, right? Where you have this membership vibe. And so you move into the building, not knowing anybody. And immediately when you move in, this app helps you engage with your neighbors, right? And, I'm not a betting person, but, I'm willing to bet a lot of money that's going to help with renewals, right? And that's what we see on our end. We see that like the more people connect with the building, with the neighbors, they're more likely to renew their lease. We also have tools to help them get onboarded, right? So we have a system where you can see move-in tasks, right? So just like if I brought a new owner to use our app, my team would onboard the property team, right? And make sure that the property team knows how to use the software, can talk about it to prospects, residents, We do this. We want to do the same thing for residents that move in. We want it from that prospect to resident conversion. You want to make sure they have a really good onboarding process, and that's where like things like a move-in tasks checklist come in. And then, last thing is you want to make sure that they stay engaged. So we have a built-in loyalty program where you can incentivize them to earn points for completing tasks or doing things that, overall will lead to them renewing their lease. So, there's a lot of data on resident events. People enjoy those things, and they enjoy fitness classes on site. They enjoy, reserving amenities. Like, you want to make them use your community as much as possible. And that's where that loyalty program comes into play. So the second,
if I can just jump in here for a second, one area where we see a lot of value with this app is we have a lot of spaces that could be reservable, and could be bookable and paid for by the tenant. And before we onboarded ElevateOS, we didn't really have any capacity to actually have it be transactional, where the tenant can book a room or a private space and make sure it's reserved and pay $10 an hour or $15 an hour for that room. We would typically just have the room be available. And so with ElevateOS, they actually integrate into our access control system. And through their app, they can book, for example, our spa space, which is just a room, a really nice designed room with a sauna, steam shower, and cold plunge. And previously to ElevateOS, we wouldn't have been able to really charge for that just because we had no way to lock it. But now we're able to actually lock it with our access control, and the tenants get a one-time code through ElevateOS, and they pay $20 a session. So if you can think about that, we have in Baker's Place, 206 units, roughly 300 to 350 people living there. And if everyone uses or even 50% of the people use the cold plunge once a month, we just now got $20 per tenant in addition to their rent. So it's almost unplanned income that we're only really getting access through the ElevateOS app. So it's really adding a lot of revenue for us.
100%. And you can do it, where you do it per use, but you can also do it as a membership, right? Like upsell, like you can create your own membership tiers. Like if you move in, choose your tier of what you want to get access to. And so there's a lot of stuff you can do with access, and then amenities, where you make it transactional and where it makes a lot of extra income for ownership groups. I have some buildings, I know I'm going to talk about data later, but I have some buildings where they're doing 20, 30,000 a month in amenity income, just from reserving things like event spaces and guest suites, on top of their rent. The other one that, not a lot of people think about, but I like to always bring this up, this example. Every property that I've lived in, when I was a prospect, they would give me a tour. They'd say, hey, this floor over here, this dungeon, has storage lockers, right? And I'd see it one time when I'm on a tour. And once I move in, they never talk about the storage lockers ever again, right? So our app gives you the ability where you can have those storage lockers like a true shopping experience. You can go in the app, you can see which lockers are available, and you can see pricing, and you can request a locker from the apps. And what I like about that is like it puts things in perspective. Like if residents are using the app daily to book events, sign up for other amenities, eventually they're going to get across that there's a storage locker that they can reserve. So for a lot of our clients, it's actually picked up demand for storage units, because there's just no advertising around it. It's usually on a hidden floor. You can't see it. It's hard to access. But the app that people use in their daily lives, they have in their hand all the time. Now they can see real-time availability. So they're just, agree with you. There's a ton of options here besides rent to make money. Second part is, the resident app for engagement and operations is all fun and games, like doing maintenance, paying rent. That's all fun and games, and you kind of need to do those things. The second part that we focus on is hardware. So this is, I think, a huge opportunity right now for a lot of property owners. So, I can't, just this week alone, I've met, we've had calls with prospects where, they are, we're asking them what they're using. They're going live in a few months. and they're like, oh, we have this intercom system, and this intercom system has an app. We have this system for unit locks. They also have their own app. We have a system for package lockers that has a separate app. So what we do is we bring it all together. So residents are not having to download a package locker app, intercom app, and an app to manage their unit locks separately. We integrate everything, including thermostats, into one app. That's your brand, your logo. So it just reinforces our ownership group's branding, and that's a huge win, right? Especially for what we're doing with you guys, Nate. You guys came to me. You guys already decided on what locks you're doing, and I luckily we integrated with the ones that you had. Usually I tell the owners, I say, make sure you come ahead of time, so we plan, so there's no chance of a hardware where they don't have an API, right? Because that happens sometimes. One thing, and again, I'll talk about more of this later, but people always ask about like what's the NOI, increase or for the owner, right? So NOI, typically you could increase income or you could decrease expenses. Right? That's the two ways to influence it. And I drew up this little diagram here, but like 5-6 years ago, you'd have a resident app that does rent payment maintenance, and then you have a separate app for access. Nowadays, the resident apps are really powerful. Like ours, we can integrate direct with a lot of these providers, so you can skip the middleman. You're not paying for two things that do the same thing. You could just pay for the resident app, and it's going to do all the functionality for you direct with those integrations.
Yeah, Konrad, if we can go back to that slide for a second, just to give an anecdotal example of this, in one of our buildings, we were going to have to pay for the unit locks, which is up there on the top right corner. I won't say what brand, but it was going to be about $45,000 per year for just our access control app, which just gave us the ability for the tenants to have an app on their phone to unlock their doors. It didn't have any other functionality like what Konrad has on his system with all the integrations for actually monetizing the tenants. And so now with Konrad's system, we're able to go to what the model is on the left and completely remove that expense. So even without bumping any revenue from all these additional charges that we're going to be able to charge the tenant, we're able to decrease expenses, which will boost our NOI because we're not having to pay this third-party access control $45,000 a year.
And that's huge, right? There's a lot of and one of the things that I think a lot of owners just don't know is there's solutions out there that have no reoccurring fees and accomplish some of the same goals, right? And I encounter all of them, and for us, the way we operate is like whatever our client wants to use, we'll integrate with it. But I like to like you and I chat all the time, and I'll kind of tell you like, hey, here's what I would do if I want to like really maximize NOI and decrease expenses on some of the stuff. Because once you start signing up for access control apps, you're paying $5, $6, $7 a unit sometimes per month. It's crazy. So the last part of what we do. So again, we have like the engagement operations piece. We have the hardware integrations, and then the third part is services. So Elevate is not just a tech company. So I mentioned, 10 years ago, I had another company, which was in the lifestyle services business. So we learned a lot, right? I had 4 or 5 years of learning of how to run almost like a hotel style service where you're able to predict what people want service wise in the community. And what I learned was 2 things. I learned that one, it can be very lucrative. And number 2, residents really want these things. They want, especially with living in like a luxury apartment building, they want services to come to them. If a building has a gym, they don't want to go to an outside gym. They want to work on their gym. They want the trainer to come to their fitness center. They want a housekeeper. If there's a pet spa, they want a dog groomer to come groom their dog in the pet spa. They don't want to go somewhere else. A lot of these people that live in these like luxury apartment buildings, they don't have a lot of time but they make pretty good money, and they want to spend that money on things that make their life easier. So what we've done in Elevate is there's like a two-part solution here. One is the services. So in our app, we built a booking system, and the booking system is supported by an army of service teams in our back office operations, right? So it's not like, oh, we're giving you an app, we're just connecting to Rover or some other vendor. We are actually managing these services. We're making sure that residents are getting a 5-star service and experience. And because we're managing that and we're supporting all the customer support on it, we're able to extract a lot more value, right? And the other thing that is helpful, if you saw my slide when I started about our density, like which markets we're at, we're in over 850 buildings. So the more dense we get, the better our services become, the more last minute requests we can accommodate, and our margins on the services, because we have better bargaining or negotiating power with some of our vendors, our margins increase, right? So that's kind of part one. We have these services that add value that residents demand, which also bring back revenue for the owner. We also have things like grocery delivery. So this is a new one we added. I would call it's a little bit, I would say it's separate from on-site services because it's more of just a delivery drop off, but residents can actually order from restaurants and their groceries through our app, which is crazy. So, you'd have the Neutral Living app, right? And people are ordering and using it as a DoorDash. And you as an owner or landlord, you can have full insight into what your residents are using and ordering, which is kind of crazy. That does not exist normally, right? In the past. The other thing that we do is, and I've worked with property managers on site for the first 4 or 5 years of my career, I would say. So I know how managers think and what they like and what they don't like to do. And in general, and I think most managers who are listening, if there are any listening, out of 20 people, there might be one that likes to plan resident events. And what the important thing here is that resident events and resident activities are very important for a community. We've seen it personally with our services and amenity rentals, right, that are happening through the app. Properties that do things to engage their residents, like activities, events, where it drives residents to the app, to the social calendar to see what's going on every month. Those properties get much higher returns on amenity bookings, on service bookings. People that don't do anything, chances are you're getting less bookings for your amenities, less bookings for services. Your renewal rates are probably not going to be high either. So what we've done is we actually have a team that supports and helps plan events. So theoretically, you can decrease the number of people that are managing a property by leveraging our kind of off-site team to plan everything, set it up. And we have a whole network of event planners all across the country that can help plan these events, right? So that's really important. Now, this is actually like it looks like a simple slide, but there's a lot that goes into it, right? So imagine a building that has 5 or 6 different apps that they're promoting, and residents are, they're booking their amenities through one app, they're paying rent through another app, they have to unlock their door through a third app. Chances are that landlord or the management company is not going to have a lot of great data because residents are not really in one system all the time. When you have a system like ours that has everything in one system, residents, their goal, like one resident might want to sign up for a resident event. On the way to the resident event, they might see, oh, I can reserve a party room for my birthday party next month. And boom, you just converted somebody to do something at your community, but their original goal was to do an event. There might be another person that might wants to, maybe they want to unlock their door. So they're download the app to unlock their door. On the way there, they see there's an announcement that the manager posted yesterday talking about an event that's happening tomorrow, like a taco making class or something, right? So what I'm getting at is if you're in one platform, people are going to cross utilize other features of the app. And since they're in the app so much, right? It's almost like the more features you add, your engagement is higher. You can add an element of surveys. So, every property we work with, You can do surveys that are time-based, trigger-based, or just based that are transactional. So meaning after a move-in, after an amenity rental, after a resident event. So a platform like ours, if you compare it to other solutions out there that only pull data from Yardi or some of these other back-end PMS systems, those systems don't have all the data. They're not seeing everything. We see when someone unlocks a door, when they book an amenity. We can also see if they're happy after an event. We can see if they booked a housekeeper, if they had a visitor that came in. All those things can be measured, right? And this is a good segue to the benefits, right? So, I'll return to that survey section later, and when I talk about the benefits. But at a high level, right? There's less point solutions. Our system has more integrations because you're using less systems. It's almost like a cascade waterfall that starts. Because you're using less systems, you save money. And because you're using less systems, there's less app fatigue among your residents and managers because they're also the one, managing less stuff. If they're using one system, right, there's higher engagement and adoption among your managers because they don't want to deal with 5 different systems. They want to devote their attention to one. And if your on-site teams are devoting attention to one system, that's going to lead to higher engagement for your residents as well. And if your residents are using it more, you're going to get better data, better insights, and better results as a landlord. So, going back to those surveys, right? When you're able to pull in behavioral data, transactional data, time-based or trigger-based data, you can predict renewal. And that's the goal of our platform. Our goal is to, number one, make sure that we can do whatever a resident wants us to do, like service-wise and whatever, features like maintenance requests, paying rent, unlocking the door. We want to make sure it's easy. And if we can do all these things very, very well, and we can measure through surveys and just tracking what a resident does within the app, we can predict renewal risk, right? So if a property can increase their renewal percentage by 10%, that's huge, right? Like we're going to talk about NOI in a bit, but that's going to increase your NOI. That's less turns, less money spent, repainting the unit, cleaning the carpets, whatever goes into a turn. When you're able to track really good data per resident, this translates to tracking like a whole building and then an entire portfolio, right? So you're able to predict, that, oh, Siri's trying to talk to me right now. You're able to predict that, residents, Bradley Cooper is upset and he had a bad experience with maintenance. And that happened yesterday, right? You don't have to wait 30 days to get Bradley Cooper, angry and yelling into your office. You could address it right away. So there's a lot of things that, our platform does that's an added value, and helps, improve the experience, but it also helps preventative solution as well, where it can predict who's having a bad experience, who's at risk of non-renewal. So the on-site team has the data to go and do what they have to do to make it right.
Yeah, Konrad, if you can flip back to that slide. One thing that this is a big metric for us, because for us, we have about anywhere, depending on the project, location, and size of unit, it's somewhere between $1,000 to $2,500 of sunk costs every time we have a turn, regardless of us using security deposit or not, right? If the unit's trashed, then it's a lot more than that, and maybe we can get some security deposit back from the tenant that's moving out. But typically we, even on the low end, just of our costs of doing everything that we do, it's about $1,000 to $2,500 of cost. So if we can get our renewal percentage from market average is about 55 to 60% up to the 75 to 78%, that's saving us thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on expenses, one-time expenses that we would otherwise not have to have if we just have people renewing. So this is a really, really big one for us, even though it might not seem that big from an investment standpoint, just because you're not increasing the actual rental rate, or maybe you're increasing it marginally by 2 or 3%. But if we can avoid those turnovers and avoid a lot of them, right, 20-30% of them, that really helps boost our NOI.
Yeah. It's a huge metric. And I think, a lot of people focus on like attracting new leads and prospects, but sometimes the best way is to just retain what you have, right? Just like most tech companies, right? If you can sign up all the new clients you have, in the world, but if you can't retain a customer because you're doing a bad job, you know, that's not good for a software company. And it's not good for a landlord either. Um, so, I like to break down the benefits into like, people always ask like, what's the benefit to an owner? And I think there's immediate benefits of a system like ours that you can see day one, and there's also long-term benefits. So, day one ROI, most of our customers, day one, they should be able to save money on their tech stack, day one, right? Before we go live, we'll actually tell you how much you'll save. And we'll make a chart of what things you can cut out that we have built in, or we'll also tell you like, hey, you're paying for these two things that do the exact same thing. And how does that happen? It happens because they signed up for a company 3 years ago, and since then those companies built overlapping features. Happens all the time. So it's good to do like a tech stack analysis every year as an owner. Second thing we do is we do an immediate reduction in the number of portals that residents are managing. And a lot of that happens through integration. So locks, thermostats, but also, it goes to the point above, which is elimination. Like you're cutting out things that you just don't need to spend money on. The long-term ROI is, again, it's tied to what we were talking about just now, which is, improving your renewal rates, right? So, again, if you have an amazing resident onboarding and you enhance, you make sure that their internet works day one, utilities are set up, electricity is set up, mail forwarding, all these things that a resident has to do when they move in, which, by the way, you can also monetize. So not only are you adding value to the resident, but you're also monetizing some of these things. It's going to help with your renewal, right? Because if they have a positive move-in experience, they're going to start off on the right foot at your community. Second thing we do, and this could be viewed as a day one ROI as well, but we immediately add these on-site personal services. So now residents can book these concierge services all from the branded app that we build. So, I like to view these as like enhance and monetize because residents demand it. They want these services, and the owner has the opportunity to monetize that through a rev share. The third one is, because residents are using one system, from a long-term perspective, you're going to be able to get better data because they're in one platform, right? You're not juggling three or four, you're in one. So you're able to extract a lot of that data and make better decisions. And better data also leads to, again, that increase in renewal percentage. You got to just figure out, every building's different, but once you have that data, you can figure out what levers to pull to get that renewal percentage higher, right? Now, I threw in some metrics here. So this is like averages from the last 12 months, but on average, our customers reduce number of portals from around an average of 4.7 to 1. They save about $952 a month on their tech stack. And again, a part of that is just eliminating things, but also getting better pricing on a resident portal, right? Our system also helps generate reviews for like Google and apartments.com. So we have about a 5.8 positive reviews generated per month, just per building. We also have higher management satisfaction and retention for the on-site teams because not everything's on their head, on their plate, right? A lot of managers, like, they don't want to do events. They don't have time. They're busy dealing with resident issues, putting out fires. So when we come in and we offer them a platform that does everything for them from the resident experience side, they really like it. In fact, I was just at a conference the other day, and one of the managers we worked with got promoted to a regional, and I was joking around and said, I think you got promoted because you're using our app. You had more time to do all the other things that are, are important. But no, they're actually like a really good manager. So I know why they got promoted. Um, the other thing is 95% of our communities that have a revenue share, our revenue share is actually larger than the cost that they pay for our platform, which is pretty crazy. So, you might ask, why doesn't everybody do this? It's a great question. Everybody should do this. Um, the other thing that we do is we have a lot of ways to automate managing amenities, communication to residents. So on average, an average property saves about 578 hours per year just through our automation tools that we have built, right? So there's a lot of benefits to owners, to residents, and to on-site staff. So I'll leave it to question and answer. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, if you have questions, please unmute yourself. First raise your hand, but please then unmute yourself and go ahead and fire away if we have any. I can also unmute, I think.
Don't be scared.
I have a question, Conrad. How much is your app for, like, if you had let's just say 25 unit building?
25 unit building. So generally we charge, we have like a minimum typically for size. So, our minimum is like $100 a month to white label, and it all comes down to the white labeling. But let's just say, if you had a 100 unit building, we generally charge about $1 a unit per month. So 100 unit building would be $100. 200 unit building would be $200. We can do discounts. Like we've done discounts where, we have some, like, with you guys, you guys are working with Heinz to manage.
Yeah, I think ours is like 25 cents per unit.
You have a really good rate. I don't know if it's 25 or 50. I think it's 50 cents.
I think it's 25.
Maybe I have to check. But we work with Heinz nationally. So, we have very attractive pricing. Anybody who wants to do like a bulk rollout for the portfolio, you call me up, you say, Conrad, I'm ready to sign up, and I'm going to whip up my calculator. I'm going to do some math and get a really good deal going. So, we like portfolios.
Okay, let's go back to the 100 unit example though. So if I get you signed up for 100 unit, right, it's $100 per month. But then what can I expect as my return with all the revenue share that I'm getting?
Yeah, so I think, I'll give you like some examples. So let's just say we have like your 100 unit building, and let's pretend that it's in like the really good market, right? Like downtown urban 100 unit building. So there's two main revenue streams that you can pull on, and they're both a little different. So the one is like the move-in tasks, right? The onboarding. So setting up internet, setting up utilities, electricity, setting up mail forwarding. So, that can generate up to $125 a unit per year. And that depends on, do you have bulk Wi-Fi, already set up? If you don't, then, our system can help with kind of pointing residents in the right direction on which provider to go with. So, $125 a unit a year for the move-in tasks up to. Then there's the services. So the services in a building, again, high-end building, urban, your revenue share or your revenue per resident could be $45 and spend per resident. So per month, right? So $45 a unit and spend per month. So 100 units, that's $4,500 a month, if my math is correct, in revenue generating from services from your residents. If you had 300 units, that would be 3 times that, right? Almost what, $13,000,
$13,500
per month. So and what's interesting about this, I'm giving you the data that we have from like last year, which was like we had 4 main services that we ran. We had housekeeping, pets, fitness, and handyman. This year, we've added a lot more stuff. We've added car wash, grocery delivery, restaurant ordering, moving, junk removal. So we like to add services that are value add, that enhance the resident life. So, this I'm going to look at the data from like 2020 from this year, right? 2024. But from what I'm seeing preliminarily, like our spend per unit per month went up because of the added new services we added, right? Now it's 8 services versus 4. So, we're now getting, yeah,
For math, if we, let's just say it went up to $50 per month, right? Maybe it went higher, but let's just say 50. So I'm paying $1 per unit per month for the software. I'm getting and spend $50, but then obviously we're splitting that with you. So that's dependent, of course, on how many units we have. But let's just say hypothetically it's 50-50, right?
yeah. Usually, like I'll tell you this, like if I pull out all the data we have, for our top performers, like 95% of our like kind of urban class A buildings, they don't pay anything. So like they usually have like a 2 to 3 up to 4x return on what they're paying. So if they're paying $100 a month, they're getting back 400 or 500, at the best, right? Most of the time it's like 2, 3 times. And the other thing that is dependent on, like, we try to make sure our app does everything, right? Like we enter with Yardi and Trada. We do all of our resident, we do a lot of our own resident communication. We make sure the app is optimized so residents can see these things in the app. But a lot of it also depends on the on-site management team. If the on-site management team is like raving about those services and promoting it and the concierge, that actually boosts our revenue as well, right? Versus we had a situation where there was a third party concierge company in one building, and residents would come and ask them for like, oh, how, who do you recommend for this and this service? And the third party concierge was going against the grain and recommending some random vendors that were not approved through the app. So, what ended up happening was we found this out like 3 months later because the building wasn't performing. It wasn't doing what it normally should be doing. And we found out that the concierge company had like business cards at the front desk from like random vendors. So that's a real problem that we have to deal with sometimes. We have to like make sure that whoever's managing the property, they understand that all these things are built into the app and it's part of the program and it's like a one-stop platform, right? Because when things like that happen, it causes friction, right? Like residents are told to go and sign up for another app, another website. It's confusing. But yeah, going back to your, original question, it's generally like 2 to 4x what you're paying.
That is that you're getting on average back as revenue. And that's really straight then because there's no expenses.
Yeah, and that's assuming buildings are fully occupied. We've had the platform live for at least 10, 12 months because there's like a ramp up of like the engagement. There might be people that like when we start working with a building, some like imagine like you're living in a building for like a year and then we go live. Right. Because we don't only do new construction, we do takeover sometimes, right? So imagine like if you lived in a building for a year, you might already have a personal trainer or a housekeeper, right? If we take over midway through. So for us, we like to kind of like, we love when there's like a new construction building where it's almost like a baby. You can teach the baby and you can kind of start from scratch. You don't have to wait for turnover, right? So like if you've lived there for a year, you might already have all these things accommodated. We might have to wait until you move out, until you actually fully start using, the new owner that moves in will use the services. So that's also like a thing. But the other thing that it depends on too is what you're paying per month. Because if you're paying $1 a unit versus paying 50 cents a unit or 75 cents a unit, that's also going to help your ROI. So like some of my larger clients, they've negotiated better rates. So they have like a 7-8x multiple on what they're paying.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think regardless of whether it's 3 or 7 or 8, it's still the bottom line is that whatever we're getting in addition to covering our expense of Elevated is going directly to our bottom line because we don't have to pay any expenses on that, right? There's no expense ratio. So it's 100% income that has no expense burden associated with it, which is really nice. The other thing I think we forgot to mention is we've been signing up all these retail tenants, and they've been really liking us having this app because they're going to use Elevated, at least the restaurants are, to allow the tenants to order food from the on-site restaurant. So one of the things that we have is a cafe going in the first floor of Baker's Place, and that cafe will post its menu on Konrad's app, and then the tenants straight from their unit will be able to order their cup of coffee or their sandwich or avocado toast and go pick it up in the cafe. So it will be really nice. I see that we have two questions, so I will take Casey's first and then Robert's.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey, Nate. The question I had for Conrad was, what percentage of tenants actually use the app?
So on average, or like, best performing property? Like, I guess that's the best question, I guess. I'll answer your question with a question.
Yeah, your answer. Yeah, you got to answer the question first. Like, what percentage overall are you?
Overall. Okay. So overall, I would say, our average adoption is like 93% if you look at all the properties. And a lot of that has to do again with, is there a strong management team? Is the management team, not as strong? Is there a lot of turnover? So we have some properties we notice with more turnover, they have lower adoption. Whereas there's properties that have a strong management team that are, 99%, 100% adopted. And when you add in elements of like access control into the app, that increases adoption significantly as well. Because
You're talking about like opening the door or opening the garage door or something like that.
Yeah. Because it's a required thing.
Yeah, the big thing for us that's going to increase adoption is our whole access control system. So if someone wants to enter their unit, they can only do it through Konrad's app, or if they have they'll get a little key card. They can use the key card, but most people, especially if you're at all technical inclined, you're going to use your phone. And to do that, you need to install Konrad's app to be able to open your apartment.
Yeah. So like that helps a lot. Maintenance requests, lots of usage there. If a building has amenities, lots of usage there. I think, I would like if I were to split it up, like I think there's a good way to answer your question too is like an average is 92, 93% overall. It's great, but I would actually split up the properties where it's like class A properties, class B and class C. Class A, when they have a lot of these bells and whistles, or I call them like reasons for residents to use the app, their engagement's like closer to 98%. Like Nate's properties are going to be like 97, 98% trending. What drags our average down is when we have a property with no amenities, no nothing. The residents are just using the app for communication, work orders, moving checklists. There's limited things you can do within the property. And that's where the engagement is just, they don't use it as much.
Yeah, the other thing tenants will have to have the app for is if they have any type of package, so Amazon, UPS, get delivered to them, they're going to get a text notification that's going to take them to the app. And then that app will have a QR code, one-time QR code to let them access the package room for security reasons. So if you want to pick up your Amazon package, you have to have Konrad's app. So we're trying to make it like really challenging to live in the property to do really anything without the app. But if you have the app, it's like super easy.
Yeah, we have a property. I'll give you like a good example. We have a property actually on Monday. They just switched over all their locks. They upgraded them, and the regional manager called me and said, "Hey, we're not giving residents key fobs." I go, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Yeah, we're if someone like really wants one, we'll give them one, but the way we're trying to push this is that everything's going to be through the app." So I thought that was a very interesting way to go about it. So their building, they're not even promoting that they're going to do key fobs ever again. They'll do it if someone asks, so they have to. I think legally you have to, but the way they're promoting it is it's going to be all app-based going forward.
Konrad, we have another question in chat. which is from Mark Harrington. Are users sensitive to data privacy? And do you leverage / monetize any of the data you collect from the app?
Yeah, so we definitely use the data. Do we sell the data to anybody? No. We use the data for our own internal purposes. So we want to see, what services residents like. We want to get feedback after, an appointment's completed. We want to see, we basically want data to help with the goal of let's help the owner get data on how they can, who's at risk for renewal, non-renewal, which residents are happy, unhappy. We haven't had residents, complaining. We've had sometimes residents maybe like they turn off their notifications, right? For if there's like emails going out promoting, some of the services on site. But all that can be turned off. We have switches where you can opt in and opt out some of these things.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we already have a lot of the sensitive data because they have to provide it with their lease. And so you're not harvesting the data, right, and selling it. It's really the data is getting collected and going to the owner.
Yeah. Our app, you guys collect, and people actually, this is like a really good question because we get asked this all the time for like new customers, but as an owner, when you're using Entrata or Yardi, I mean, you're collecting their driver license, security, social security number, all these things. In our app, we don't take any of that info. Like we just have first name, last name, email, phone number, apartment, address, unit number, lease start date, lease end date. We don't pull in all the other extra stuff. The only data we have really like that's useful is again what they're doing within the app, but we don't have any of the other sensitive stuff.
Well, I know we're at time, but Konrad, I really appreciate you coming on and educating us about what we're using and how we're making our buildings a little bit more technical inclined. I appreciate everyone who joined us for this segment of Neutral Webinar, and we'll see you next time.